Hi guys, Christina here, and today I'm going to go through the resources that we used for our Alberta mini unit that we did. Now if you're new here, we are studying Canada for the entire year, and so we're taking time to go through each province and territory after doing kind of a general overview of Canada. I'll link that up above if you'd like to see the overview. So just as a reminder, our children are 9, 8, 7, 4, and 1. So that's grade 5, grade 3, grade 2, preschool, and then of course the toddler. So I wanted to start off by just showing you kind of how I've set up each unit of the province and territory that we're going to do. So we're using it based on this book. So this is the Canada Up Close series. This is geared towards 6 to 9-year-olds. I'll give you a quick look inside. So you can see there's lots of pictures, there's short sections, and it's divided into 6 main chapters. So we're taking each of those and dividing that into our days. So we have 7 days of lessons for each province and territory. Now this is social studies, geography primarily. Of course there's overlapping as well as art. And so we do 3 a week. So we typically do just over 2 weeks for each province. So we read out of this book, and then what I did is I took worksheets out of this book, and this one is for grades 4 to 6. So that's one way that we made it work for our family, doing it together for multiple ages, kind of younger, older, and I'll show you their binders and how I put them together, but these are the 2 main books that we used. I'm also using this series here, Canadian Sights and Symbols. There's a few things that this one didn't quite cover that I wanted, so I'm pulling some things out of this book as well, and I'll give you a quick look at the inside here. This book, so you can see what it looks like. So again, very colorful, very straightforward, but they have a book for each province and territory. So we're going to be using these 3. You're going to see these repeated for each province or territory that we do. And I'll show you their binders in a minute to see what the inside of this book, how that actually works out. Now, before I get into their binders, we also have, behind me here, we have the flag, the capital, and the flower for each province that we're adding. We're currently doing BC, so you can see that. Now, we started with Alberta first because this is where we live, and because there were some things we wanted to do outside that I will show you, like their art project, that needed to be done before really it started snowing. So that's why we started with Alberta. Now, at the very end, I'll just talk a little bit more about their art project and show you that. But first I wanted to show you that the read-alouds that we did. So of course that crossover again, I wanted to use some of their language arts to showcase the social studies. So this was the first book that we read, As Long as the Rivers Flow, by Larry Loy, I believe is how you say it. Give you a quick look inside. It's beautiful artwork, very straightforward story. It's the story of Lawrence, as he was called at the time, when he was, 1944, when he was 10 years old. It was his last summer with his family up in northern Alberta near Slave Lake before he was taken to residential school. And I love this book so much. I love it. I think I might actually buy a copy for us because it was a very age-appropriate way to talk about something that is a very sad part of our history, and we're going to be talking about later on in our history studies. And so it was a good introduction to the kids, a good topic opener for us to talk about. But there's also so much in here about the way that they lived, about tradition and about culture. We actually lived up in this area for 2 years, and so even hearing in here when he calls his grandma Cookum, I hadn't heard that for a while since we lived up north, because that's the word for grandmother. So absolutely love this book. My kids liked it too, so very good book. The second read aloud we did was from the Canadian Flyer series. We're reading almost all. I think there's only 2 we're not going to read. And this one, of course, about dinosaurs. I was a little disappointed it didn't talk Oh, I really didn't talk at all about Alberta specifically, but of course the area where the dinosaurs primarily were here in Alberta. So my kids like this book. It's very short. It's kind of like the Magic Tree House, if you haven't heard of those ones. So that's the book. And then on top of that, I asked my kids to do some reading. I kind of pulled a few different books and I asked them to choose what they wanted to read. So Joshua, who is my 9-year-old, he read this one, All Fall Down, part of the Dear Canada series. This is a very large series on, they are made up stories, but they're based on true events and often real people at different historical events in Canada. So this is about Frank Slide. Now last summer we actually had the chance to go to Frank Slide and to go through the Interpretive Center, which we really enjoyed, very child friendly. And so he chose this one to read. That was his first book. And then the second one was this one, which is Dinosaur Fever by Marianne Woodson. This one takes place down along the Milk River in Writing on Stone Provincial Park, which is in Alberta. And my son said he really liked it. It had to do with dinosaur eggs and some kind of like mystery, that kind of thing. So that's that book he really enjoyed. And then my 8-year-old Tyler, he chose this book. So Terror at Turtle Mountain. So again, talking about Frank Slide and Turtle Mountain when it fell. And that was his book. And then the second one he chose was this one, which is Head Smashed In, a short story by W. Fred Bowen. I'll show you the inside because it's an illustrated one. So it's quite a large book, but it's quite simple. And again, we had the chance to go visit this over the summer, Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump, just very briefly, but he really enjoyed this one. So that was another read aloud that we did for our Alberta unit. So I'm just going to switch gears here and I'm going to give you a view of their folders or their binders and kind of how we work the family school together while learning about Alberta. So these are my children's binders. This is Joshua, my 9-year-old, Tyler, my 8-year-old, Nathan, my 7-year-old, and Caitlin, my 4-year-old. So these are our binders for the whole year. And I took pages primarily, or pretty much all, out of that Alberta book that I just showed you. So we started with a map and an exercise. We talked about the emblem and the flower. So my son has a few more sheets. The way I did it was I gave my youngest kind of school-age child fewer sheets and then just added more as we went. So for instance, Joshua has a sheet about southern Alberta and the cities there, about the geographic regions, the Saskatchewan River System, about natural resources in Alberta, more there, about the oil sands, and see how they have different activities kind of throughout, about the Badlands, about the teepee, homesteaders, about Fort Edmonton, about rural and urban changes. He had a worksheet kind of here to do about distances and map work. And then he had this at the end. I had them try and remember from memory as many of the cities as they could where they were. And then we did the quiz as well at the end. So just to show you how that differs, this is my son who's in grade 3. You can see he had this one here about the different kind of views or areas of Alberta. Again, some of the same ones. But he had fewer, like he didn't have the fort one and stuff. Here's the Badlands one. The teepee, the homesteaders. Oh, there's the fort one, so he did do that one. The changes. And again, this one here. This is Nathan's. So he had fewer sheets here. Where's it stuck? There we go. So you can see which ones he did. And so again, this part was over 6 days. There we go. Now, my 4-year-old, of course, does not want to be left out, so I tried to have one coloring page for her each day that was on what we talked about. So Alberta was the first day, the map, about farming and agriculture. We did a day they talked about drumheller and dinosaurs. This one, I think I just filled in because I didn't have anything for that day. We're talking about settlers and such, about Stampede and Calgary. Those were her pages there. So again, there is an overview of their binders. So I just wanted to show you kind of how it worked with the book. So for instance, this was chapter 2, A Land of Plenty. They're talking about resources in Alberta. And so for that day, that's what we read all the way up to there. And then these were the sheets that we did. So the natural resource one here, this one, and this one. So that's kind of how we put it all together. So as I've shared in a previous video, I like to take out books or have books around the house on what we're studying all the time for all the age levels, all the way from my youngest child up to the oldest, so that they can kind of pick them up and look at them as they want. So I'm going to go through and give you a look at the books we had on hand. These are ones that we owned. So Weird Alberta Places, Interesting Facts, Stories, just an interesting book for kind of the older child. A Prairie Alphabet. Of course, this isn't exclusive to Alberta, but it has some beautiful artwork, very short, and again, the alphabet. So the next pile here are library books. So we had Alberta Lullaby. This is a board book. Very pretty pictures. Great look at kind of the different landscapes in Alberta. Very nice story as well. So that's that one. Good Night, Alberta. It's another board book. Again, going through all the different areas, famous places in Alberta, different events and such. There we go. So we had this book here, Native Nations of the Plains. I'll give you a quick look here. The inside. We had Native Nations of the Arctic and Subarctic. Of course, some of these books, because they don't, then First Nations were not bound by our current boundaries, we'll be looking at some of these kind of over again in different provinces and territories. Drumheller Dinosaur Dance. This is a fun book for kids. Alberta, just a book on province. You can see pictures and different little bits of writing. In the Footsteps of Giants, this is a bunch of short stories for early readers about people who were in Calgary or instrumental in the development of Calgary. Looks like a really interesting book, this one. Canadian Aboriginal Culture. This is a Sioux. Then from the same series, I'm not sure I'm saying this right, Denisulian. I hope I'm saying that right. Again, so the kids can just understand the different groups, the differences, the similarities. And I had another one here from the same series, Cree. Give you a look at that one. So they're all set up very similar. Really interesting things in there. Then, of course, we have the Interior Plains. Now, there's a video as well similar to this, which we'll watch when we do Saskatchewan. But there you go. There's an overview of that. C is for Calgary, Cal's Alphabet Adventure. This one I didn't really like. I like seeing the pictures from the old Stampedes here, but I wasn't a huge fan of this book. That's a young child's book there. Another board book, Why I Love Alberta. There's a series of these books. Really fun book for kids. showcasing animals, cities, and just different parts of Alberta. Then we have this one. We had this from our Canada unit as well. The Kids Book of Aboriginal Peoples in Canada. Just more information there. And then we had C is for Chinook. I shared we're going to be using this series all throughout because they have for every province and territory. I'll show you. So the reason I really like this is that, you know, it has something you could read to a younger child here. This is Bayou Ranch, which is somewhere we actually got to go to. So I will link that up above as well if you want to see our field trip to Bayou Ranch. But then it has more details here for an older child so they can read more about it, and of course the alphabet part of it as well. And then we had 2 movies as well. So we had Travel Scope Southern Alberta. This was just about like 15-20 minutes long. It was quite short, but it was interesting. And then this one here by Kent Tate, Big Horizons, or Long Horizons, sorry. Explore the Beauty of the Canadian West. This is actually just pictures and music, so maybe if you've never been to this part of the world, it'd be interesting to see. It wasn't kind of a favorite of ours, but interesting in looking at least once. So there you go. Now on the last day of each province and territory, we focus on an artist and then we do an art project. So for Alberta, we looked at Roland Gissing, who was spent a lot of time in the Cochrane and then the Okotoks area. He was a cowboy, originally from England, and we learned about how he really loved the landscape here, and he did charcoal, he did pastel, he did oil paintings. He also had a lot of paintings from the oil and gas sector, which were bought and sent out around the world. He's a really interesting person, sometimes known as the people's painter. And so from that we took our camera, and I taught my children some basics about using the camera and the tripod, and we went out and they took pictures of our local scenery, and then they edited them. They chose which one they wanted, edited them, and made them black and white. So I will insert now a picture of their finished product. So I forgot to mention too that we're also using this book here, Canada's Natives Long Ago. As we go across the country, we're talking about the different areas. So for Alberta, we did the, make sure I get the name right, Natives of the Plains chapter. And so that's kind of what that looks like in there. So we also use this book too. I mentioned that we went to Bayou Ranch, which is a Canadian National Historic Site here in Alberta. We also made a trip to the Glenbow Museum in Calgary. I'll put a link down below to our Instagram pictures from that if you want to see, just to kind of help things to sink in, right? When you read about the fur trade and then you go see kind of what a fur trade station looked like, of course that's just the extra learning that happens, right? So if you have any questions, if I've missed anything, please leave them down below in the comments and I'll try and answer them for you. But other than that, I hope you're having a great day and thanks for watching. Take care.